Well, this would be Kate Johnson herself, Lady Kate, of course, of England.
Oh, hey, Kate. Kate, it's good to hear from you. I want to have you on the show as a guest. You've got to
I
come on the
know.
show.
I know. I'm trying to do that right now. So,
I mean, on camera. But what have you got? We're talking about animated movies today. And I know
oh,
your son loves Space Jam. I don't mean to steal your thunder. Is that what you were going to talk about? How your son loves Space Jam, or do you have something else to say?
there's so much to add to that. Well,
I couldn't understand.
sorry, that was Alana trying to build a tower. But yeah, um, I'm down to talk about whatever. I was thinking about the nostalgic. Are we on the air now?
Yes, we're live on the air.
Okay. All right. So I was thinking about. So think about the different decades when you got ready to go out, right? Like in the 80s, what did you check for? Like maybe your wallet and like 50 cents to maybe use a payphone, maybe a pen. The 90s,
Right?
you have your wallet, and then you're like, oh, I got my pager though, but I still got my 50 cents. I can call you back.
I remember a pager, and I remember payphones. Certainly, I'm old, man. I'm older than you. I know all that stuff. That's pretty good nostalgia right there. But what about? Tell me, what are your favorite animated features when you were a little girl? Did you like the Little Mermaid? What about your favorite
Yeah,
animated movie?
honestly, I didn't like any of them because I was like, this is such a fantasy that like this is not ever going to happen for me. And I actually hated it. I hated every single one of them. I would watch them like dancing around. I'm like, this is not real life. Like that's not going to happen for me. There's no way.
So you were disillusioned. You didn't believe in the fairy tale romance. You didn't believe in Prince Charming. That's a shame, Kate. That actually
So,
hurts my
so
heart.
you're saying, so you're saying that I'm disillusioned because I don't believe in mermaids?
I'm saying it's a shame that you had your childhood heart disillusioned when you realized this is not going to happen to me. This is BS or whatever your life experience tainted you from believing. Believing on magic and believing on wishing upon a star. I think that's sad.
Yeah, it was pretty
It's
sad.
not an insult. It's just a comment. I believe I'm. We're.
Sad.
I'm not trying to be insulting here.
But like I was saying, anyway, back to the decades getting ready to go out. So the 90s, when you get ready to go out, you're like, okay, wallet, quarters, pager, right?
Okay.
And then the 2000s, it was wallet, pager, maybe cell phone, maybe some quarters, couple dollars, a pen, maybe something to write down with to get them numbers, get them digits. But then now it's 2021, and now when you go out, you have to be like, okay, I got my phone, my wallet, my keys, my vape pen, my vaccination card. Um,
Yeah, it's the contrast of how crazy things are now versus then and the differences. Yeah, I catch your drift. Now, how old are you, Kate? Do you mind saying? I know it's an improper question to ask a woman, but how old are you?
I'm 32.
So you're a millennial.
Technically, yes, but I would not like to associate with the typical millennial behaviors because a lot of them now are wearing
Keep it
mom butt,
clean.
what I call mom butt pants,
Repeat that. What'd you say?
mom butt pants.
Mom butt pants.
Yeah, where they have like pulled up all the way up, like underneath their bust. It's just like, like it just looks like they just took a solid dump.
Oh, geez. Oh, wow. Oh,
Right.
God.
It just looks like
Could this be
walking
Kim
around
Kardashian
like
inspired?
a
Could this
fully loaded diaper.
could this be
That's
Kim
what it looks
Kardashian
like.
inspired? Is that your point? Could it be Kim Kardashian inspired pants?
I mean, probably, yeah, but they don't realize what they look like from the back. Like, you look like you just took a like,
We get it.
they look like my daughter just took a solid dump in her diaper.
Kate, Kate,
And that's
Kate.
people are walking around it.
Kate, I got to tell you something. There was a movie called So Fine with Ryan O'Neal. It was a comedy where they had pants. The women's ass cheeks you could see through. Each cheek of her butt in the pants. It was a trend. You could see through them. I can't believe that these things have not become real to this day. But it was a movie from like 1981 called So Fine. Look it up. Just Google So Fine, and you'll see, you can see women's bare butt through, like, it's clear like cellophane on each butt cheek of the pair of jeans. It's hilarious.
Well, if you look up So Fine right now, it's going to pull up that Sean Paul song. It's like, oh, so fine.
Kate, do you have anything to add about animated movies? I got to get back on topic, or you're pretty hilarious. So I love your commentary today.
Oh yeah. So back to the animated shit. Did you notice that the Disney people use the exact same scene of the dance from like The Little Mermaid and like a different movie? Yeah. So what they did was, like, all the dance scenes where they're doing their like dramatic ballroom dance, they keep reusing the exact same images from the same movies. They just have them edit into, like, oh, this is princess and this is this different prince.
Okay, so they just play musical princes.
Yeah, but they took the same images from the first one, Beauty and the Beast, the ballroom dance scene, took that and photoshopped it and changed it to a different prince and different princess and used it in several different Disney movies.
That's called being a cookie cutter. It's like a cookie cutter type deal. Interchangeable.
Exactly.
Well, does your son still love Space Jam?
Yes.
I didn't know if that was just a phase or what, because I know you personally, and I did not ask you to call. I'm glad you called, but this is unsolicited. So it's great to hear from you. I've been wanting to have you on the show on camera with me. We'll have to do that sometime and come up with a topic that you want to talk about. I'm going to do another show on sex symbols next week because there were so many I forgot. So many. I mean, like supermodels and dudes. Like, I forgot to mention Burt Reynolds, for goodness sake. I forgot to mention Demi Moore.
I could bring up Devin Sawa, like I said.
Yeah, we'll talk about it next week. Yeah. But open invite. You could come to the studio and be on camera if you want, or just do it by phone. But I'd love to have you on.
All right, great.
You sound so enthusiastic. You're like, great.
No, I'm sorry. My daughter is trying to build a tower out of markers, and it's not happening because, well, they're markers. So.
How old's your daughter?
Well, she's 2 years and I guess 4 months. 2 years and 4 months.
And here's something on topic. I took her to her first movie, and it was an animated, recent live-action and animated combo movie called Tom and Jerry, the movie.
I know. And she threw popcorn everywhere.
Oh, I know. I took pictures of the debris afterwards. It looked like a friggin' war zone.
Yeah.
But she's a toddler. You know, I'm not blaming her. It
said no.
Hey, baby. Hey, baby doll. Hey, baby. Hey, baby. All right, Kate, I'm going to wrap, but I'll give you a call offline later, and let's or a text, and let's.
Listening.
What?
I'll keep listening.
Thank you. I appreciate your interaction. I'm so glad you called. Thank you, Kate. You're a good pal. Thank you. Bye. Kate Johnson, everybody. I met her on the set of a movie called The Change Up, okay? That was a movie kind of like Freaky Friday. I just said, okay. I hate when people do that. Okay. But it was called The Change Up with Ryan Reynolds and Jason Bateman, and it was a movie where, get this, I hate to use this word, but I'm just describing my role. It was really a background role. It wasn't credited. There were no dialogue or anything. I played a porn producer, and she was a porn star. And it's in this scene. If you've seen the movie, you'll know the scene I'm talking about, where they're making a movie, and let's just say there's a malfunctioning nipple. Okay, I'm not trying to be crude. Family show, but it's a funny scene, and Kate Johnson is in it, and they flew her in from New York. That's where she's originally from Binghamton, New York, and she now lives down here in the Marietta area. We became friends, and she's a good, funny gal. She does a lot of jokes, and she's been doing some amateur stand-up comedy and things, and that's Kate Johnson. Getting back on track, we were talking about Song of the South, and the crab with the golden claws and the tinderbox, fun and fancy free. Yeah, and I kind of botched that. Let me start over with Fun and Fancy Free. That was traditional animation and live action, released September 27th, 1947. And Jack Kinney and Bill Roberts directed the animation, with Hamilton Lusk and William Morgan directing the actors. I screwed that up, so I want to get that record straight and get that correct. On December 13th, 1947, there was a stop-motion animation movie released called The Czech Year, like Czechoslovakia, and that was the first Czechoslovakian animated feature, The Czech Year. On May 27th, 1948, Melody Time was released by Walt Disney Productions, and it was another package film or a compilation film. The Adventures of Ichabod and Mr. Toad was released by Walt Disney as another package film on April 15th, 1949. Then, in 1949 in France, Alice in Wonderland was released, and that was directed by Dallas Bauer. That was an animated feature in France. Then you had The Dynamite Brothers by Nino Pajot, P-A-G-O-T, in 1949, and that was the first completed animated feature in Italy. The Dynamite Brothers, the first animated feature in Italy. Now, the 1950s kicked off with Walt Disney's Cinderella on February 15th, 1950. Now, Cinderella was the movie Walt didn't care for. I messed up. God, I'm making all sorts of mistakes today. To set the correction corner, it was Cinderella that Walt Disney took issue with. He allegedly he didn't like the finished product of Cinderella, but of course it was a big hit, February 15th, 1950. And then Walt Disney adapted Alice in Wonderland for America and the world. And that was an animated story released July 26, 1951. The first Brazilian animated movie was released January 13th, 1951, and it was called Amazon Symphony. Walt Disney struck gold again with Peter Pan on February 5th, 1953. And then RKO Radio Pictures released Hansel and Gretel, an opera fantasy. That was stop-motion animation on October 10th, 1954. The Enchanted Village was the first Canadian animated feature, released December 23rd, 1955, by Marcel and Raoul Racicot. I guess it was Quebec, Canada, but Racicot. I'm sorry for not pronouncing that and mispronouncing that, but Marcel and Raoul Racicot. I don't know how you say that, but it was The Enchanted Village, the first Canadian animated feature. I love this movie, The Lady and the Tramp, Walt Disney Productions. That was the first animated feature to be released in widescreen, CinemaScope. And that reminds me of a process I always didn't like when VHS came along, pan scan, where they would literally use a camera to scan to the left and to the right of the image. Because CinemaScope, that was the thing. TV was a big hit and had come along in terms of inventions at this point in time in the late 40s. I think in 1946, television was invented. And in the early 50s, they had to compete because movie houses weren't packing them in like they used to because people were staying home to watch TV after they bought their expensive television set. So what the movie producers did was they came up with a system where the picture's larger than life and it's wide, just like movies are today. And that was called CinemaScope. So pan scam, and I call it pan scan, I call it pan and scam, came along, and it really stunk. It was before the letterboxing with the black bars. Anyway, I don't like pan and scan because you don't see the full image. When you watch a CinemaScope movie on television where it's cropped, it just looks like crap. I don't like it. So anyway, Lady and the Tramp was the first animated widescreen movie. The Heavenly Creation. That was the first full-length animated film using stop motion in the Soviet Union. The Heavenly Creation, released in 1946. The Big Fun Carnival was traditional animation and stop motion animation, and that was also a compilation film of old theatrical cartoons previously distributed by Paramount Pictures. And this was planned as the first of 12 features, but it bombed. And this was the only one released back in 1957. So the Big Fun Carnival for Paramount didn't make the cut, and so they didn't release the other 11 installments they had planned. Oh, this is actually a television animated movie. I'm going to make just this one exception, maybe two, and mention television production. Actually, I know there's two. Hemo the Magnificent. This was a film that Frank Capra directed, a very popular movie director. And this was a movie about the circulatory system, and it aired on CBS television on March 20th, 1957. It was made for TV. I think it might have been released theatrically. I have a film print of it, but it was a combination of hand-drawn animation and live action. And Time Magazine, the D-bags at Time Magazine, wrote terrible reviews of Hemo the Magnificent, calling it condescending and dumbed-down science. So Time Magazine didn't like it, but history has proven different. It was pretty entertaining, Hemo the Magnificent. It's a very well sought-after film print. They're kind of plentiful, too. You can find that to this day on film if you look on eBay. The Tale of the White Serpent was released October 22nd, 1958, and this was the first anime feature in color. And anime means Japanese art, as you know. Just for those that don't know, that's anime. So October 22nd, 1958, The Tale of the White Serpent was the first Japanese animated feature film. Jack Kinney directed 1001 Arabian Nights, which was traditional animation for Columbia Pictures. And it was released December 1st, 1959 in America. Sleeping Beauty. That's a whole different spin on it, Sleeping Beauty. Boy, talk about a creeper. Anyway, Sleeping Beauty. This is not Sleeping Beauty, which sounds like a roofie tale, but Sleeping Beauty was produced by Walt Disney Productions and was released January 29th, 1959. And it was 1 hour, 16 minutes long, and it was the first animated feature to be presented in Super Technorama 70 widescreen, which means 70 millimeters, 70 widescreen. Super Technorama 70 widescreen. And that was the last Disney movie to use traditional inking, hand-inked pencils, meaning there's one artist that draws the pencils and another artist inks over it, literally traces over it in ink. So Sleeping Beauty, I did it again. Sleeping Beauty was the last Disney movie to use traditional inking. Moving along, The Coyote's Lament. The Coyote's Lament was released March 5th, 1961. And that was actually a Disneyland TV series, another television production, and it was released theatrically later, but it was from season 7, episode 18 of Walt Disney Presents. And it was released theatrically abroad, meaning in Europe and other countries, in 1968. The Coyote's Lament. 101 Dalmatians. Everyone knows this one. Released January 25th, 1961. And it was the first animated feature to use xerography. The xerography with an X process. Xero graphy. Xerography process, which replaced the hand inking process. Gay Paris. That was Abe Levitow's second and final feature film, released December 17th, 1962, and it was Judy Garland's only animated film role. Warner Brothers, it was Warner Brothers movie, Gay Paris, and it was Robert Goulet's first feature. Fun fact about Robert Goulet, Elvis Presley allegedly despised Robert Goulet, and anytime a Robert Goulet movie came on or an appearance or an interview graced the King's TV screen, he pulled out a revolver and shot the screen out, supposedly. He pulled out a revolver and just shot out the screen. He couldn't stand Robert Goulet. But that was his first feature, Gay Paris, and Judy Garland's only animated movie. And Chuck can't talk today. Chuck Jones directed it, who is known for doing the Tom and Jerry cartoons of the 60s and, of course, the Warner Brothers cartoons, Bugs Bunny, Roadrunner. The movie tanked. Gay Paris was not a hit. It bombed. Joseph and the Dreamer was the first Israeli animated feature from 1962, debuted in 62, and it was stop-motion animation, Joseph and the Dreamer. On Christmas Day, 1963, The Sword and the Stone was released, and it was Walt Disney's last feature to be released in Walt Disney's lifetime. Directed by Wolfgang Reitherman. And it was released on Christmas Day in the USA. Hey there, it's Yogi Bear was released June 3rd, 1964, and it was the first animated feature based on a cartoon TV series, and the first feature by Hanna-Barbera, where our esteemed guest worked for many, many years, Mr. James Tim Walker, who was a guest on today's show. If you want to hear the interview with Mr. Walker, please just go to the beginning of the show and fast forward about 15 minutes, and that's where he came on. Very inspirational interview, and I'm very grateful to have him as a guest on the Nostalgic Podblast. Here's a good movie, a good comedy, The Incredible Mr. Limpet, which was a combination of animation and live action starring the great Don Knotts, released March 28, 1964. It was a Warner Brothers release, and I just remember the fish. There's so many great moments in The Incredible Mr. Limpet. Walt Disney released Mary Poppins on August 26, 1964, and it starred Julie Andrews and Dick Van Dyke. I always get that one confused with Chim Chim Chimney, what is that movie? Chim Chim Chimney. Oh, I got some comments. Ryan O'Neill says, awesome show. Thank you, Ryan. I want to talk with you, Ryan, about your station. He's on WQEE, I believe, in Noonan, Georgia. I want to talk about partnering with you. Let's talk. I'll give you a buzz tomorrow or Tuesday, but thanks for the nice comment. But yeah, Mary Poppins was a great movie with Julie Andrews and Dick Van Dyke. The chimney sweep one, God, my brain is not following on all thrusters today. What was that movie called? Someone tell me in chat what that movie was called. But I always get it confused. Chim, chim, chimmy, chim, chim, chiroo. And I think that Dick Van Dyke was in that, but not Julie Andrews. I always think Julie Andrews was in that movie. God, I can't remember it. But the chimney sweep. Damn, can't remember it. The Man Called Flintstone. This is something I learned preparing for today's show. This is cool. I didn't know there was a feature Flintstone film that came out around the time of the TV show, and it was a James Bond spoof. It was the second animated feature by Hanna-Barbera, released on August 3rd, 1966, with Mel Blanc as Barney Rubble. And, of course, Mel Blanc, he was the man of 1,000 voices. And he also did Twiggy in Buck Rogers in the 25th Century. Hiya, Buck. Remember him, Mel Blanc? He did all the voices, Bugs Bunny. He did the Warner Brothers cartoons for Chuck Jones. But he was one of the two actors that voiced Barney Rubble in the Flintstones television show. And he worked on The Man Called Flintstone. And it was a spy comedy. And like I said, a James Bond parody. But the theme song was not used in that movie. And you know who composed the theme song? Al and I talked about this. The Skipjacks. What a weird name for a band. The Skipjacks, who also sang the theme to The Patty Duke Show. Here's Kathy, who's lived most everywhere, from Zanzibar to Berkeley Square. But Patty's only seen the sights a girl can see from Brooklyn Heights. What a crazy pair. But they sang also the Flintstones. I'm not going to insult your ears with trying to sing that as well. But they sang the Flintstones. The Skipjacks. Boy, I'm going to run out of time. I got a 3-hour hard stop, so let's continue on here. I got about 35 more minutes. Hong Gil Dong was the first Korean animated feature released January 21st, 1967. I'm going to give some props to these other animated knockoffs across the world because America, we're the true innovators. The others are imitators. Imitation is the sincerest form of flattery. So I will give credit to the imitators and the knockoffs, like Hong, you can't make this up, Hong Gil Dong, the first Korean animated feature. This is a cool one, Mad Monster Party with Boris Karloff, released in the USA in conjunction with Japan on March 8th, 1967. That was a Rankin Bass production and a MOM production. Stop motion animation, and it featured the voices I mentioned of Boris Karloff, the original Frankenstein, and Phyllis Diller, the comedian. Mad Monster Party. On September 27th, 1967, you had The Wacky World of Mother Goose, which was another Rankin/Bass production, and it was a co-production of the United States and Japan. The Mouse and the Mayflower, another Rankin Bass Jr. production and Jules Bass production, USA and Japanese production, was a TV special later released theatrically, starring Eddie Albert from Green Acres and Tennessee Ernie Ford. And it aired on November 23rd, 1968 on NBC TV, but it was released theatrically, so I included that on this list. Here's a movie I thought actually was released in the 70s, but it wasn't. The Jungle Book, the original version, not the remake, released October 18th, 1967. And it starred a really interesting actor, George Sanders, who a lot of the geeks out there like me will know from Batman with Adam West. He was the original Mr. Freeze in season 1. Oh, and also in that first Mr. Freeze episode was Terry Garr. She had a small speaking role. It was one of the first roles she ever had before she was on an original Star Trek episode, Assignment Earth, with Gary Seven, played by the star of 12 O'Clock High. I digress here. I'm digressing, but Terry Garr was in the first George Sanders Batman episode, Rats Like Cheese. And he played a very menacing Mr. Freeze, and he wound up committing suicide, sadly, in the early 1970s. But George Sanders was in The Jungle Book, of course, as Khan. And it was based on the book published in 1894 by Kipling. And that was a Walt Disney production and a tremendous hit. And I saw the re-release in the 70s, so that's why I was thinking it was new back in the 70s. I'm an old fart. But The Jungle Book was a good one, originally released October 18th, 1967. Out of an Old Man's Head is the first Swedish animated feature. Featured traditional hand-drawn art and live action, released December 6th, 1968. Hey, Beatles fans, Yellow Submarine, in the town where I was born, in the land of submarine. I'm no Ringo Starr, but he's not much of a singer himself. But I love Ringo Starr. But Yellow Submarine was released in the United Kingdom and featured traditional hand-drawn animation and live action and the Blue Meanies. It was released July 17th, 1968 in the United Kingdom and November 13th, 1968 in the USA. Great album, too. Yellow Submarine. In the town where I was born. I'll probably get dinged just for humming that damn song. They're so picky about their music rights, and I understand why. Billions of dollars have been spent throughout the years on the Beatles library, and now, of course, there's the Beatles XM satellite channel, and man, that's why. And also, like, God, there've been so many, I won't call them sellouts because I don't blame them for doing it. People that are nearing the end of their lives are selling, like Bob Dylan. You know, he sold his library. So if you try to post that online, you're going to get spanked and spanked hard. Same with the Beatles, of course. There's just certain acts. And Elvis, the King, man, even if you hum an Elvis song, it seems like you get some consequences for doing that. A Boy Named Charlie Brown was released theatrically, not on TV. This was an actual original theatrical release, released December 4th, 1969. And it was the first feature film based on the Peanuts gang, A Boy Named Charlie Brown. Then you had A Christmas Carol, the first collaboration with Japan. Wait, no, that ain't right. That isn't right. A Christmas Carol. All right, well, I'm just going to read this. I can't even read my own handwriting. How pathetic is that? But A Christmas Carol, the first collaboration feature. Oh, yeah, this is what it was. I remember now. I read this online, and I don't think it's true. It says this was the first collaboration with Japan. No, I mentioned some other previous with Rankin Bass and whatnot collaborations with Japan, so I don't believe this. Don't believe everything you read on the internet. But according to this, it says A Christmas Carol was the first collaboration between the USA and Japan. And it was also, this doesn't make sense, the first Australian animated film. Released on December 13th, 1970 in the USA, A Christmas Carol, animated feature. I remember it. It's good. It has some great artwork in it. But, okay, guys, forgive me. The first collaboration with a foreign country. And I said, what about Japan? Okay, that's right. Okay, now I got it straight. This claims A Christmas Carol, which was produced with Australia, was the first collaboration between America and a foreign country, and that's BS because we know that there were several productions I've previously mentioned with Japan and other countries. So that's BS. Don't believe it. But nevertheless, the USA combined with talents in Australia to make and release A Christmas Carol, an animated feature released December 13th, 1970 in the USA. The Aristocats, released December 14th, 1970, starring Scatman Crothers. Scatman Crothers. I love this actor. He was known for The Shining. I hated what happened to him in The Shining, but he's the African-American bald actor from Twilight Zone, the movie, Kick the Can, and Zapped, the terrible, but I love it, it's so bad it's good, teenage R-rated sex comedy. He was in that as well, playing the husband of a character played by LaWanda Page, Aunt Esther, best known as Aunt Esther in Sanford and Son. You fish-eye fool! And she was in Zapped, and she was after Scatman Crothers' character for eating pork. She's like, it causes cancer, don't eat that spit. I'll censor that, but I love Scatman Crothers, and that was one of his first movies, and he did one of the main characters in The Aristocats. December 24th, Christmas Eve, 1970. Next up, The Phantom Toll Booth. That was by Chuck Jones. Everybody knows who Chuck Jones is. I've mentioned him before. And that was the final animated film released by MGM on November 7th, 1970. And it also featured the voice talent of Mel Blanc. You book. That's all I can do is, or try to do Twiggy from Buck Rogers in the 25th Century. But it actually was made in 1968 and was shelved for a couple years. So there's that one. You had Santa and the Three Bears, which was a live-action and animated movie, released November 7th, 1970. Shinbone Alley, June 26th, 1970. It was an animated musical comedy starring Alan Reed, who's the original voice of Fred Flintstone, and Carol Channing. It also had Eddie Bracken in it, who most people my age would know from the National Lampoon Vacation movie. He was Wally World. He was like the Walt Disney character in National Lampoon's Vacation, but he had a very prolific career when he was a younger man. And the National Lampoon people brought him back, and it was perfect casting as Wally World's Walt Disney, as it were, in that film. But Shinbone Alley, that was a good animated musical comedy. Bed Knobs, easy for me to say, and Broomsticks. Bed Knobs and Broomsticks. December 13th, 1971 by Walt Disney, starred Angela Lansbury and David Tomlinson. It was animated and live action. Let's check Facebook. Oh no, it says the video and audio stopped. Did it? Well, that's not good. Did it skip? Are we back? Oh, now it's back on. Thank you, Wesley. That's the second time you've mentioned that happened. Thank you for being out there and noticing that. Jeez. I don't know what's going on. Dang, that's not good. Sorry about that, folks. Fritz the Cat. Now, I meant to ask Tim, when I have James Tim Walker back, I want to ask him, because he worked with Ralph Bakshi, and Ralph Bakshi did a lot of adult animated movies. This was good. He did Fritz the Cat, Ralph Bakshi. That was the first adult animated feature, and it received a rated X rating. And it was based on a comic strip. And the poster even says, "We ain't rated X for nothing, baby." So it's a really dirty but funny animated movie, and it featured race riots and sex, and it really paved the way for South Park. You know, a lot of people think it's trashy and whatnot, but, you know, you just got to have an open mind. Art is so subjective, but Ralph Bakshi at first was known for controversial films like Fritz the Cat, and that debuted on April 12, 1972 with an X rating. Getting back to the family-friendly animated films, you had Journey Back to Oz from December 14th, 1972, starring Milton Berle, Margaret Hamilton, the original Wicked Witch in The Wizard of Oz, and she was the maid in The Patty Duke Show, Season 1, to get a paycheck. Paul Lynde, best known as Uncle Arthur in Bewitched. Liza Minnelli, how fitting is that? The daughter of Judy Garland, of course. She was in Journey Back to Oz with Mickey Rooney and Larry Storch from F Troop. Was never a fan of Larry Storch. Nothing against him. I don't know. It just wasn't one of my favorite actors. But it was based on the second Oz book by L. Frank Baum. It rated highly, though, on TV. It bombed in the theaters, but it got high ratings in 1976, on December 5th, 76. But it did not do well December 14th, 1972 in theaters. It tanked. Snoopy Come Home. Cost $1 million, but only made $245,073. It was a bomb. Released August 9th, 1972, and it was the on-screen debut of Woodstock, who had first appeared in 1967 in the newspaper syndicated strip Peanuts. Woodstock, did you know that? I didn't know that. Snoopy Come Home. But it bombed. Like, they always had high ratings on television, but the theatrical releases never did well. It was released by National General Pictures, and it was the only Peanuts film not scored by composer Vince Guaraldi. Guaraldi. Forgive me if I'm mispronouncing. The Sherman Brothers composed this one in the soundtrack, and they had done the music in Mary Poppins, The Jungle Book, and Bedknobs and Broomsticks for Disney that I mentioned earlier. Charlotte's Web. Now, here's a cool thing. I always thought that was a TV movie because when I was a kid, the first time I saw it was on television. But no, it was a theatrical release. I didn't know that. It was released March 1st, 1973 by Hanna-Barbera Productions, distributed by Paramount Pictures, and it was the first of 4 films not based on a Hanna-Barbera TV show. Unlike Chomps, Heidi's Song, Once Upon a Fourth... Anyway, the Sherman Brothers did the music, and it's based on the 1952 children's book by E.B. White. And get this, Earl Hamner Jr. wrote the story. You know who that is? Well, he created the Waltons around this time. This would have been shot and it would have been filmed in 1973 and created and drawn in 1972, rather, right when the Waltons was starting. So Earl Hamner Jr. really got a spike in his career at this time in the early 70s. So he wrote the story, voiced by Paul Lynde, Debbie Reynolds, who was the mother of Princess Leia Organa, the actor who played Princess Leia, Carrie Fisher, and voice work by Henry Gibson, better known for Laugh-In, alongside narration by Rex Allen. It was a great, great movie. I love Charlotte's Web. Great cartoon, and I remember crying as a kid when I saw it. It was very sad. Then you had Heavy Traffic by Ralph Bakshi. By the way, his name is pronounced Bakshi, and it's spelled Bakshi. Released August 8th, 1973. Boy, I better pick up the pace. I'm going to run out of time. And it had shocking images and horrifying events in this film. I did see this one. And it was animated blended with live action. Heavy Traffic, another hard animated movie by Ralph Bakshi. No pun intended. Then Robin Hood was released by Walt Disney, their take on Sherwood Forest, on November 8th, 1973. And George Lindsay, better known as Goober, on The Andy Griffith Show, did some voice work in Robin Hood. Treasure Island was released December 9th, 1973 by Filmation, and it was released by Warner Brothers. Hal Sutherland directed it, starring Richard Dawson. Survey says you're a schmuck. Richard Dawson, the Kissing Bandit, did voice work along with Davy Jones from the Monkees and Larry Storch. Down and Dirty Duck. This is another adult one. Down and Dirty Duck. Remember that. Down and Dirty Duck, released July 8th, 1974. It was an adult animated comedy. It featured crude humor, but it's a cult film, and it is deemed a Fritz the Cat copy. And it looks like Donald Duck on the movie poster, but it's Down and Dirty Duck. Then came, speaking of Fritz the Cat, The 9 Lives of Fritz the Cat. June 26, 1974. Again, it was very adult. and it was an animated anthology black comedy adapted by the comics of Robert Crumb, who had created Fitz the Cat, with music by Tom Scott and his band, the LA Express. The 9 Lives of Fritz the Cat. Parental discretion is advised. Oliver Twist was released by Warner Brothers on July 10th, 1974, with Davy Jones and Larry Storch, based on the 1838 novel, of course, by Charles Dickens. It was the second and last animated film by Filmation. Robinson Crusoe was the first Romanian animated feature released in 1974. Fun fact, who knew? The Three Wise Men. Oh, Wesley chimes in. Giraldi and Vince Giraldi is pronounced Giraldi. Thank you, Wesley. I couldn't do it without you. And he says, Paul Lynde's best work, in my opinion, was him playing Dr. Edward Dudley in The Munsters. Right on. I agree. That was great. That and Uncle Arthur, I think that's a tie for me. Barry King says, Journey Back to Oz, produced by Filmation Studios. Right on. Nice to see you out there, Barry King. BK on the air. Live Saturdays, 10 a.m. to noon on WBHF. And you can listen to that live via an app or their website. WBHF, look it up. Okay. Let me continue on before I run out. Now, I've got a real controversial one here. Real controversial. I don't even like saying the title of this movie. Coonskin. Okay? Now, look, I don't endorse it. I apologize to anyone offended out there, but it was a Ralph Bakshi film, and he's at it again. Released August 20th, 1975. It was like a story about a jailbreak. And it had animated vignettes. And there was a large, blonde, white, big-breasted character named Miss America, which serves as a personification of the United States. Okay? But coonskin, just like it sounds. And, oh, this is interesting. And also this, again, more X-rated animated. This is a history lesson, folks. Don't shoot the messenger. Tarzoon, The Shame of the Jungle, was an X-rated French animated film released in the USA in 1975, and it was about a lewd old lady named Mother Goose telling the quote-unquote true versions of the fairy tales in X-rated fashion. It was animated, so it was like XXX animated junk. And it told the story of Jack and the Beanstalk, Cinderella, and Little Red Riding Hood. I'm sure they called it Little Head Riding Hood or something gross like that. I'm sorry I said that. I'm just trying to be funny, but that's pretty gross. Strike that from the record. I'll edit that out. 1976 was a bad year for animated movies. There weren't many released. Only, oh, wow. I'm sorry. I am sorry. All right. It was Once Upon a Girl. That was released June 20th, 1976. Once Upon a Girl. No. I'm right. Tarzoon, Shame of the Jungle. Yeah. Once Upon a Girl was the one with the dirty Mother Goose. Okay. It was called Once Upon a Girl. All right. Tarzoon was just a dirty Tarzan. Okay. And that was a French movie. Okay. So sorry. I'm making all sorts of mistakes today. Once Upon a Girl was the dirty Jack and the Beanstalk, Cinderella, Little Red Riding Hood, X-rated animated feature. Moving on. Around the World with Bolek and Lolek was the first Polish animated feature, released in 1977. Took them long enough. It's almost like I could tell you, how many Polacks does it take to make an animated feature? Just kidding. But they sure were late to the ball game. 1977 was the first time the world saw a Polish animated feature film. Gulliver's Travels, released March 23rd, 1977, starred Richard Harris and Catherine Schell, who I know from Space 1999 Season 2 as Maya the Metamorph. But she was in Gulliver's Travels, and it was a production in the United Kingdom and Belgium. The Hobbit. Now, here's another TV animated movie that was brought up earlier in the Podblast today. The Hobbit was a TV animated movie released on NBC, or aired on NBC, November 27th, 1977. It was eventually released theatrically, but The Hobbit was a great animated feature. Then you had The Many Adventures of Winnie the Pooh. Getting a text here. I don't know. The Many Adventures of Winnie the Pooh, Walt Disney, March 11th, 1977. And it's really a retread of Winnie the Pooh and The Honey Tree from 1966, Winnie the Pooh and the Blustery Day in 1968, and Winnie the Pooh and Tigger 2 from 1974. But it did have some new material woven together, so it was kind of a retread, but it was a theatrical release, so it counts. That's the 90th, including the foreign films, that's the 90th animated feature film that we've covered today on the Nostalgic Podblast. Whew, I need a break. I can't stop, though. The clock is ticking. The Mouse and His Child was released November 18th, 1977, based on the 1967 novel, and it had the voice work of Cloris Leachman, Peter Ustinov, and Sally Kellerman, and it was by Russell Hoban. Pete's Dragon was released November 3rd, 1977 by Disney. It was a live-action and animated feature film, and it featured Helen Reddy. Not a fan of Helen Reddy. She's an Australian singer, of course. Just nothing against her. I just didn't really dig her music. Just opinions are like rear ends. Everybody's got one. And it also had Red Buttons in it. Don't like him either. Red Buttons, Mickey Rooney. He's a well-known jerk in Hollywood. And I know from seeing him at Dragon Con. I think in 2007, I was at Dragon Con, and I witnessed people come up to him and ask him questions, and he'd look at him and go, "Are you going to buy an effing autograph?" And that's cleaning up what he actually said. He was so rude. He was a little guy like me, even smaller than me. He was just a bitter, bitter old man, Mickey Rooney. But I'll never forget that, how he was just pissing on his fans at Dragon Con. Oh, and also in Pete's Dragon was Jim Backus, otherwise known as Thurston Howell III in Gilligan's Island, and the voice of Mr. Magoo. And Jane Keane was in it, who was an actress who had played Alice Cramden. And it was a musical fantasy, Pete's Dragon, from 1977. Then came along Race for Your Life, Charlie Brown, on August 24th, 1977, by Paramount Pictures, produced by United Feature Syndicate. Again, it didn't do well. The Peanuts movies didn't do well at the box office. They didn't fare well. Raggedy Ann and Andy, released April 1st, 1977, by 20th Century Fox, and it starred Didi Cohn doing voice work. Do you know who she is? She played Frenchie a year later in Grease, her most popular role, and she was the only original cast member from Grease to be in Grease 2, reprising her role as Frenchie, the character who was a beauty school dropout. The Rescuers by Disney. I love The Rescuers. I saw that when I was a kid, a little kid, released June 22nd, 1977, and I absolutely loved it. Remember the Devil's Bayou, Louisiana. And it had Bob Newhart and Ava Gabor and Geraldine Page providing voice works. It had a budget of $7.5 million, but the box office, get this, $169 million. It was a major hit, and it was re-released several times, The Rescuers, followed by The Rescuers Down Under years later. Ralph Bakshi returned in a non-X-rated animated film, Wizards, on February 9th, 1977 for 20th Century Fox. It was about a nuclear war-devastated Earth. Loved it. It's a cult classic. It had a budget of $2 million, and it grossed $9 million, Wizards. Then came Lord of the Rings, November 15th, 1978, with a budget of $4 million, but it made $30.5 million in the United States and Canada. Starring the voice talent John Hurt, Anthony Daniels, C-3PO. Ralph Bakshi directed it, and it was the first American animated feature to be produced in Dolby Stereo. That's a pretty cool fact. And it was the longest animated feature film ever at 133 minutes, and that's 2 hours, 13 minutes. Gee, you think? I mean, those Lord of the Rings movies, I guess, they had a rep to protect. That's why the live action movies in the in the 21st century were long as hell. They were just like way too long, but entertaining. Now, I don't care for this one because I love bunnies. Watership Down. It was the first animated feature in Dolby Stereo, and it was a United Kingdom release. Released October 19th, 78 in the United Kingdom and November 1st, 78 in the USA. I didn't like it because it showed, even in illustrated form, bunnies getting killed, and I love bunny rabbits. Wesley says the many adventures of Winnie the Pooh also included Winnie the Pooh and A Day for Eeyore. I like that. That's cool. Bugs Bunny Roadrunner movie was released September 14th, 1979, and it had 6 of the old 1950s theatrical shorts edited together. Those were old Looney Tunes shorts, And it was released for the 40th anniversary of Bugs Bunny with new material to bridge the old shorts. Let's see how we're doing on time. Wow, I've got 11 minutes. So you had The Adventure of Sudsicorn, released April 13th, 1979. That was the first Thai animated feature, and their only one until a movie called Con Clury in 2006. April 13th, 1979. That's when the Thais got into the animation feature game. Seven Brothers was the first animated Finnish feature film in Finland in 1979. Now we go on to the 1980s. The 1980s. Bon Voyage, Charlie Brown was released May 13th, 1980. And that was the fourth Peanuts feature film. I don't know why they kept releasing them. I guess they hoped they would end that losing streak at the box office. But United Feature Syndicate released it for Paramount. And let's see, it made $2 million, released May 13th, 1980. Oh, but this is kind of interesting. While Charles Schulz was fighting in World War II, he thought of the idea of the castle when he was visiting Chateau Malvoisin. And that's a castle. And he made that a big part of this movie, Bon Voyage, Charlie Brown. So salute to Charles Schulz for fighting against the bad guys in World War II. Ralph Bakshi returned in American Pop on May 13th, 1981. That was the fourth animated feature in Dolby Sound, or it might have been the fourth overall Dolby feature, not sure. But it's the fourth. Oh, no, it is. I'm sorry. The fourth animated feature in Dolby Sound was American Pop by Columbia Pictures. It was a story of 4 generations of Russian Jewish immigrants, family members of musicians whose careers parallel the history of American popular music in the 20th century. The majority of the film's animation was completed through a process known as rotoscoping. Live actors were filmed, I remember this, live actors were filmed and animators sketched and drew over them using watercolors, computer graphics, and the like to accomplish that effect, and it looked really cool. The Disney classic, The Fox and the Hound, was released July 10th, 1981, with a budget of $12 million, but it was a tremendous success, grossing $63.5 million. Had the voice work of a-hole Mickey Rooney, Kurt Russell, Pearl Bailey, who I love, Pat Buttram, who was best known as the shyster in Green Acres, who would sell all sorts of faulty crap. Pat Buttram, John Fielder, otherwise known as the voice of Tigger, the tiger, Corey Feldman, and it was basically loosed on the 1967 novel, The Fox and the Hound. Then you had the Looney Bugs Bunny movie, released on November 20th, 1981. And it was, again, 6 shorts compiled together, using some new footage to bridge it all together. Now, here's a great one. Heavy Metal, released August 7th, 1981, with a budget of $9.3 million. It took in at the box office $20.1 million, so it was a big hit for Columbia Pictures, and it was a Canadian-American release. Very adult-themed, had great music in it, a lot of graphic violence. I just love it, and for the longest time, all you could find were bootlegs of it. It wasn't widely released. I think it was banned for a while, but you couldn't find it on home video. But it was very adult, based on the magazine Heavy Metal of the same name, and it's a cult classic right now. And it had the voices of John Candy, Joe Flaherty, who were both on SCTV, Second City Television in Canada. A couple of podblasts ago, I said that troupe was out of L.A. Of course it was Canada, and I know that. Eugene Levy, Harold Ramis from Ghostbusters a few years later, and from SCTV, and John Vernon, who played the, I was going to say the warden, no, the head of Animal House, the headmaster. No, that's not the right word. You know what I'm saying. The warden. John Vernon, he was the dean. That's what I'm looking for, the dean on Animal House. And it had it featured music by Blue Oyster Cult, Stevie Nicks, and Journey. The song Open Arms was featured in Heavy Metal, among others. Then Bugs Bunny's third movie, 1001 Rabbit Tales, was released on November 19th, 1982. And again, 6 shorts were compiled. Mighty Mouse in the Great Space Chase was released on December 10th, 1982, and it was just a bunch of re-edited old cartoons by Filmation. The Last Unicorn was released November 19th, 1982, with the voice work of Jeff Bridges, Alan Arkin, Mia Farrow, Robert Klein, Christopher Lee, who has a great voice. He played Dracula in the Hammer horror films. He was Scaramanga in the James Bond movie, The Man with the Golden Gun. He was in a Space 1999 episode as a nice alien called Earth, an episode called Earthbound from season 1. Tammy Grimes, who had a terrible show in the 60s, did voice work, as did Keenan Wynn, Paul Frees, and Angela Lansbury for Murder, She Wrote. Heidi Song. That was by Joseph Barbera and William Hanna, released November 19th, 1982, and it's based on the 1881 novel Heidi by Joanna Spyri. S-P-Y-R-I, Spyri. Oh, I'm all over the place. Hey, Good Looking was released, a Ralph Bakshi production, on October 1st, 1982. Another adult animated coming-of-age comedy drama, or dramedy as I call it, that Ralph Bakshi wrote, directed, and produced, and it featured mob hits in it. Released by Warner Brothers. Hey, good looking, what you got cooking? The Secret of Nymph, N-I-M-H. Nim, The Secret of Nim, rather. Released July 2nd, 1982 by MGM UA, was an adult fantasy by Don Bluth. It was his directorial debut and his first feature after he left the Walt Disney Company. It was based on the 1971 children's novel, Mrs. Frisbee and the Rats of Nim by Robert C. O'Brien. And this featured the voice works of Dom DeLuise, who Don Bluth used a lot in his movies, and John Carradine. And it cost $7 million and earned $14.7 million, so it made it more than doubled its money, which is cool. The Wizard of Oz, October 6, 1982. This was the animated version of The Wizard of Oz, and it tanked. It was another collaboration with Japan and America, and Lorne Greene did some voice work in it from Bonanza and Battlestar Galactica. It only was released in America in the Cannes Film Festival in 82. But then it got wide released December 31st, 1986, and it was wide released in Japan, but it tanked in America. By the way, I love The Wiz. I want to talk about The Wiz later when we get to my salute to African-American films and TV shows. I love The Wiz with Michael Jackson, and that was just such a good version of The Wizard of Oz, but I digress. Now, after a 30-year, I'm going to go longer than 3 hours. Jeez, I'm sorry. Wesley Millsap says Daffy Duck had 2 movies. Daffy Duck's Quackbusters, yep, going to talk about it, and Daffy Duck's Fantastic Island. Right on, my brother, you are right. Now, after a 30-year absence, this is a cool fact. After a 30-year absence, Mickey Mouse appeared in his first new Mickey Mouse theatrical cartoon in Mickey's Christmas Carol, released December 16th, 1983. Now, prior to this, he had not appeared in a movie since the short film The Simple Things in 1953. That wasn't a theatrical, that's why I didn't mention it. It wasn't a full-length feature. It was a short, so that's why I didn't mention it previously in this Podblast. That's pretty cool. That was the first time in about 30 years. And also there was a new process that was introduced. It's called the APT, APT process. And this was an animation photo transfer process in which a system can transfer lines or solid blocks of colors onto sheets or cells, like Tim talked about, photographically, similar for making the stencils for silkscreen printing. And it was most notable in the graveyard sequence in this movie. But the process relies on ultraviolet UV sensitive inks, which when exposed to light stick to the plastic sheet. And while the ink in the non-exposed areas is chemically removed from the sheet, it creates an effect. This movie was an adaptation of the 1974 Disneyland Records audio musical, an adaptation of Dickens' Christmas Carol. Here you go, Wesley. Daffy Duck's Fantastic Island, released October 5th, 1983, was a compilation of Warner Brothers classic cartoons, and it was the 5th of 6 Looney Tunes compilation feature films. Ralph Bakshi returned in Fire and Ice on October 26, 1983 for 20th Century Fox, whom he worked with previously in Wizards. Had a budget of $1.2 million, but the box office was only $860,000. $1.2 million, $860,000 gross, so they took a bath on that a little bit. And it was another dark, epic fantasy film. The critics despised it, and Gene Siskel said, "It's like reading a comic book with pages made of lead." Fire and Ice. Twice Upon a Time, the first animated feature that George Lucas produced. It had stop motion animation and cutout animation, which was used in this film. Released August 5th, 1983, Twice Upon a Time, used Lumage, the Lumage process, Lumage, in which prefabricated cutout plastic art pieces that animators moved on a light table to create an effect. And this blended with live action, traditional 2D animation, and stop motion animation. Next, Winnie the Pooh and A Day for Eye Art, that Wesley also mentioned, was released March 11th, 1983, in limited release and then wide release later. It was expanded to a double feature in wide release with the re-release of The Sword in the Stone. And Tigger returned, and the wide release was released March 25th, 1983 by Disney. And Winnie the Pooh's pals returned, Piglet, Rabbit, and Ruru. The Adventures of Mark Twain was the first fully clay animated feature film, released March 1st, 1985. I guess the California Raisins must have been in at that time, and it starred the voice work of James Whitmore. Ooh, this is kind of cool. The first PG-rated Disney animated movie, The Black Cauldron, was released, and it was the 25th Disney animated feature film, and it was set in the early Middle Ages. And this movie centers on the wicked emperor known as the Horned King, who is after a magical cauldron that will aid him in his desire to conquer the world. John Huston narrated it, released July 26, 1985. Took a bath. Budget was $44 million, but the box office was only $21.3 million, so maybe the PG rating hurt it. I don't know. Or bad word of mouth. Oh, boy, I should stop with this one. I'm already over 3 hours, so I'm just going to keep going. The Care Bears movie. Released March 29th, 1985. Mickey Rooney did the voice work. It was a Canadian-American movie, but I think, yeah, it did tremendously well at the box office. It had a budget of $2 million, but it scored $34 million at the box office, the Care Bears movie. Now, I'm going to digress for a second. I'm a Marvel comic books collector, and anyone watching on YouTube or Facebook can see all these Marvel comics behind me. And for the 25th anniversary of Marvel Comics, they had a comic with a border around it. And I have every single one. I'm talking every title, whether it's Amazing Spider-Man, Incredible Hulk, X-Men. I could go down the list and bore you to tears, but there was a border. But they had a Care Bears comic that Marvel Comics published in conjunction with this movie and the success of this movie by their children's comic book line called Star Comics. And I don't have that. I need to get that. It's the only one I need to complete my collection. I mean, I have the hard-to-find ones like Marvel Age and G.I. Joe. Anyway, I digress. Care Bears movie was a tremendous hit. Okay, then came Here Come the Littles. Now, I'm going out of order. Okay, I keep saying then came. So if you notice that the release dates are out of order, forgive me for that. I'm just going in order of basically how I remember these movies. That's how I compiled this list. It's just through memory and through notes on the web. But Here Come the Littles, released May 25th, 1985. It was produced in France and was based on a TV show on the American Broadcasting Company, ABC. Then you had, see, these are getting a little bit, in my opinion, it's probably from my perspective because I was an adult, a teenager at this point in time, but these seem kind of like they're getting lamer to me. You had Rainbow Bright and The Star Stealer. And that was by DIC Productions. And that's literally what they would say at the end of their cartoons, like Inspector Gadget. You know, when it would show the logo, it would say, Dick. I always got a kick. Thought it was silly. Dick, DIC, Dick. But Rainbow Bright was released and distributed by Warner Brothers. And it had the voice work of Jonathan Harris, otherwise known as Dr. Smith in Lost in Space. So that's the only good thing I can say about Rainbow Bright and The Star Stealer. The Secret and the Sword. Wow. All that was the first 5 episodes of She-Ra, Princess of Power, which is a spinoff of He-Man and the Masters of the Universe cartoon. But get this, it was released in theaters before that TV show even aired. It was before. It released March 22nd, 1985, but it made money. It had a budget of $2 million, and it made $6.5 million. Secret of the Sword. That was a She-Ra thing. Now, Care Bears Well, forget that. Let me move on. The Adventures of the American Rabbit debuted on January 17th, 1986. It was an American Japanese animated film. And then you had another monster hit, An American Tail, another Don Bluth directed animated production. And Don Bluth had left Disney, as I mentioned previously, released on my birthday, November 21st, 1986, with a budget of $9 million for Universal Pictures, but it earned $104.5 million. So it was a tremendous, tremendous success. And it had the voice talent of Christopher Plummer, who recently passed away, Dom DeLuise again, who worked in a lot of Don Bluth productions. And it was the highest grossing non-Disney animated feature film, An American Tail. The critics didn't like it. I remember watching Siskel and Ebert, and they didn't care for it, as I recall. Now, you had Care Bears Movie 2, March 7th, 1986. And let's see. Oh, it only had a budget of $3.4 million, but it made $12 million. So even the sequel made money. Care Bears Movie 2 was a hit. Then you had, with the voice talent of Margot Kidder, otherwise known as Lois Lane, and Roddy McDowell, GoBots, Battle of the Rock Lords. It was a total bomb for Hanna-Barbera, sadly. Cost $1.3 million, and it grossed $312,186. Telly Savalas, who loves you, baby? I can't do an impression. I'm sure our friend Jim Goss at newsmakerline.com could. But Telly Savalas, who loves you, baby? The Greek star did some voice work in that. You had The Great Mouse Detective for Disney, released July 2nd, 1986. Cost $14 million. It made $38.7 million. And it starred Vincent Price and Alan Young. Alan Young was the human against Mr. Ed in the old show. So they worked on that movie together. On January 17th, 1986, you had Heathcliff the movie. And it had a budget of $2.6 million for Dick. And it was just TV episodes that were re-edited, and it had the voice work of Mel Blanc. My Little Pony, the movie, released June 6, 1986. It made a $500,000 profit for Hasbro Toys and Hasbro Productions, and Dino De Laurentiis produced that, and he had done Flash Gordon, and King Kong, the movie that is universally hated. I didn't mind it, but I don't compare it to the original Fay Ray that we talked about earlier in the show. I just don't. I consider it a different movie. It's just because of the way I was raised and when I was raised. Anyway, Dino De Laurentiis is kind of notorious for having cheesy movies, but Flash Gordon, to me, from 1980, is one of the best movies of all time. It's just so bad, it's great. Now, get this. Transformers the movie hit the scene on August 8th, 1986, and it was set in the year 2005. Not to be confused with the Shia LaBeouf Transformers, but this one had Judd Nelson from The Breakfast Club, Leonard Nimoy, Mr. Spock, and In Search of Robert Stack, Orson Welles, and it was Orson Welles' final film, for goodness sake, and Scatman Crothers was in it, and it was Scatman Crothers' last movie. It broke even, so, Hollywood's not there to break even, but at least it didn't lose money. So Transformers, the movie, the animated movie, just was stagnant. But Scatman Crothers died a few months after the release of Transformers the movie, his last film, and Orson Welles died right after they wrapped production, before it was released. Can you believe that? Orson Welles in the cheesy, I guess he needed a paycheck. The Brave Little Toaster, with the voice talent of John Lovitz and Phil Hartman. The ill-fated Phil Hartman, who was murdered by his crazy wife in his sleep, shot to death. Terrible thing, his drug addict wife. But the Brave Little Toaster that was Disney distributed, it broke even with $2.3 million in the USA. The Chipmunk Adventure, released May 22nd, 1987, scored $6.8 million at the box office, and it was about a hot air balloon race. Pinocchio and the Emperor of the Night. That was released by New World Pictures, Christmas Day, 1987. With a budget of $10 million, but it tanked with only $3 million. No, I'm sorry. Yeah, it was a bomb. I'm sorry, it was a bomb. Pinocchio and the Emperor of the Night. It had the voice work of Jonathan Harris, Dr. Smith. Oh, the pain, and Tom Bosley, known for Happy Days. And that was released Christmas Day, 1987. I don't know why I can't read, Moan. I got it. All right, the budget was $10 million, and it tanked with a box office of $3 million. $3,261,638. Okay, it bombed. And guess who else was in that movie? Oh my God, I didn't realize this. Oh, and Pinocchio and the Emperor of the Night. Don Knotts, Ed Asner, James Earl Jones, the voice of Darth Vader, William Wyndham, big time talent, and a big time stink bomb. Jeez, that's unfortunate. That's unfortunate to have their name attached to that terrible thing, terrible movie. But of course, some movies are sleepers that don't do well at the box office, but are still worth your time and entertaining. You had the Puppetoon movie, a stop-motion animation movie based on George Pal characters. You know who George Pal is? Look him up. George P-A-L Pal. He had a lot of science fiction movies like The Time Machine in 1960, shot in 59. Anyway, George Pal created these characters in the 1930s and 1940s. And this was an animated version of his characters. The Puppetoon movie, released June 12, 1987, it was distributed by Expanded Entertainment. Then you had Akira, A-K-I-R-A, Akira, considered by many as the greatest Japanese animated feature of all time. It had a budget of $5.5 million and made $25 million. Tremendous success, released July 16th, 1988. Brave Star the movie, one of the first to use computer graphics. Filmation released this on March 18th, 1988. And it was like a space western, Brave Star the movie. Have you heard of it? Shia LaBeouf. I'm sorry, Wesley. I need to do something else. If I can't pronounce simple things, you are right. Shia LaBeouf is pronounced Shia LaBeouf. Correct. I sit corrected, and I appreciate you being out there looking out for me. Daffy Duck's Quackbusters that Wesley, speak of the devil, mentioned. Speak of the angel in my case. He's an angel to me. Daffy Duck's Quackbusters debuted in theaters September 24th, 1988, and it was the last of the Warner Brothers compilation movies, which also had 6 classic Warner Brothers cartoons featuring Daffy Duck. Oliver and Company. This was the 27th Disney animated feature movie based on Oliver Twist by Dickens, the 1838 novel. And this movie, Oliver and Company, was released November 18th, 1988. The budget was $31 million, and it made $121 million. Major hit, starring the voice talent of Bette Midler, Joey Lawrence, Billy Joel, Cheech Marin of Cheech and Chong fame, Robert Loggia, and Roscoe Lee Brown, a great underrated actor, Roscoe Lee Brown. Pound Puppies and the Legend of the Big Paw, based on the Tonka toy line, was released by Hanna-Barbera. And Veronica Cartwright, the sister of Angela Cartwright, who played Penny on Lost in Space and was one of the Von Trapp children in The Sound of Music, did the voice work. And also, Veronica Cartwright was at the end of the classic remake of Invasion of the Body Snatchers. Remember, from late 1978 with Donald Sutherland? She was the girl that survived being duplicated by the pod people, and she tricked the aliens by showing non-emotion, and she comes up to Donald Sutherland, not realize he's been taken over, and she approaches him, and he goes, "Aah!" Had a terrible ending to that movie, but that was Veronica Cartwright. She goes, "Ah!" She's shaking her head. It's a really dramatic scene. She was such a beautiful actress, and she was one of the child stars of Daniel Boone, the early to late 1960s series. Daniel Boone, Veronica Cartwright in Pound Puppies and the Legend of the Big Paw. And it was also based on a Hanna-Barbera TV show of the same TV series of the same name. I tried to say show and series at the same time just then. Now, here was one that I loved. Who Framed Roger Rabbit? Loosely based on the 1981 novel Who Censored Roger Rabbit? And it hit movie theaters on June 22nd, 1988 with a budget of $50.6 million, but it made a whopping $329.8 million. Directed by Robert Zemeckis from the Back to the Future trilogy and later Forrest Gump. He's one of my favorite directors. And it was live action and animated, all in one, coming together, set in 1947 in Hollywood, where cartoons and people coexist, kind of like Washington, D.C. today. But Amblin Entertainment, Steven Spielberg's company, produced it, and it was released by Disney's Touchstone Pictures. And as we learned last week, thanks to an astute Podblast audience member, and this is uncredited, Kathleen Turner voiced Jessica Rabbit, the sexy Jessica Rabbit, voiced by, what a great voice Kathleen Turner has and had. And June Foray from Rocky and Bullwinkle voiced Wheezy and Lena Hyena. Christopher Lloyd was his voice Judge Doom, from Back to the Future, Doc Brown, and Taxi, the TV show. And Bob Hoskins got a big break as Eddie Valiant. So that was a really breakthrough movie, Who Framed Roger Rabbit. We're getting near the end, folks. God, this is a marathon. I've been on the air for 3 hours, 15 minutes, and 30 seconds. My Lord. This is going to be a two-parter. I don't know how I'm going to air this on Fistful of Radio. I guess it'll just cut off. It's like I have diarrhea of the mouth today, but I appreciate everyone staying with me. Oh, yeah. Becky Ross Smith, correct. Another sexy animation, in my opinion. Absolutely. Jessica Rabbit, oh, yeah. Yeah. She was smoking for a drawing. Isn't that silly? To get aroused by a drawing. But that just tells you how talented. That's a testament to how talented the artists were. Either that or I'm just a pervert. I don't know. Maybe a little bit of both. Nah, I'm just kidding. Oh, here was another good one by Don Bluth, The Land Before Time, from November 18th, 1988. Anything with dinosaurs is almost guaranteed to be a hit and a success. Kids love dinosaurs. Adults love dinosaurs, but especially children. But Land Before Time by Don Bluth was released November 18th, 1988, with a budget of $12.3 million, and it earned $84.5 million. Leaping lizards, like in Annie. That was Daddy Warbucks' expression in the comics and in the movie. Albert Finney played him, I think. Leaping lizards. Steven Spielberg executive produced it, along with George Lucas and Frank Marshall and Kathleen Kennedy. The music was by James Horner, best known as scoring Titanic, or Titanic, as I like to call it. Comedy, just a little attempt at comedy there. And James Horner also scored Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan! That wasn't annoying enough, was it? But this time, Dom DeLuise wasn't in it because he opted to do Oliver and Company. And Amblin Entertainment, Universal Pictures, produced and released this, and it was just a tremendous success, a non-Disney success. All Dogs Go to Heaven, another Don Bluth animated feature, released November 17th, 1989, starred Sexpot, who will be on part 2 next week of Sex Symbols. I forgot to mention Lonnie Anderson. She did voice work in All Dogs Go to Heaven, and she's one of the great, even with her wig and all, she's one of the sexiest stars of all time. And forgive me for not mentioning her ex-husband, Burt Reynolds, who, for goodness sakes, was in Playgirl back in the day on that Sex Symbols Podblast. But next week, we're going to revisit that, and I have a whole list, and I got feedback from a lot of listeners and viewers that took me to task. You can't mention everybody, right? But there were some key ones like Demi Moore. Several, I have some interesting, what I think are interesting stories to tell about, what I know about these stars and things that they went through and things that they did that I'll share with you next week live here on the Nostalgic Podblast. So All Dogs Go to Heaven, wrapping up on that. That was by MGM United Artists. Budget of $13.8 million, and it earned $27.1 million. And along with Lonnie Anderson, you had Dom DeLuise returning. Charles Nelson Riley, better known for Match Game. Burt Reynolds, Speak of the Devil. And Vic Tayback from Alice, best known as Mel. Mel Sharples in Alice, the sitcom. And Melba Moore. The Little Mermaid. Samantha loved this movie when she was a kid. November 17th, 1989 is when it was released. And it had a budget of $40 million with a box office of $233 million. A whopping success. Oh, it's a monster hit for Disney. They just could do no wrong. Well, it's the name, it's the brand. You know you're going to have quality. And Jeffrey Katzenberg was just on fire in those days heading Disney. And let's see, The Little Mermaid, of course, was based on the 1837 Danish fairy tale by Hans Christian Andersen. The Little Mermaid, what a hit. Now, this is something that our guest today worked on, James Tim Walker. DuckTales, the movie he talked about. Released August 3rd, 1990, with a budget of $20 million. It made $18.1 million. And it was a Disney film. And that was part of their French division. So it was a collaboration with France. DuckTales, the movie. Then you had Jetsons, the movie, on July 6, 1990, by Hanna-Barbera. Box office of $20.3 million. Universal Pictures distributed it. And it had Tiffany and Mel Blanc. Tiffany, not Tiffany and Mel Blanc, but the teenage singing sensation, Tiffany and Mel Blanc.
Buck, I'm getting tired. Buck, I need some water. I need to go to the bathroom. You gotta wrap it up.
Mel Blanc was in it with Tiffany. The Nutcracker Prince. Am I still on? The Nutcracker Prince. Insert joke here. The Nutcracker Prince. The Nutcracker Prince. I'll say it again. Released on my birthday, November 21st, 1990. Had the voice work of Kiefer Sutherland, future star of 24, the TV show, Phyllis Diller, and Peter O'Toole, whom the Brotherhood of the Popcorn documentary showed. I urge you to go back and watch our Podblast with Woody Wise, which also features our wonderful guest today, James Tim Walker. But they met Peter O'Toole in Hollywood at a big event. It's all on video. She showed video of it, and it's in their documentary. Peter O'Toole was in it. And this was distributed by Warner Brothers, and it bombed. The Nutcracker Prince. It bombed, unfortunately. An American Tale. Fievel Goes West. Fievel? Wesley, help me out with that one too, brother. I need diction lessons or something. But An American Tale, the sequel to American Tale. An American Tale, Fievel Goes West, released November 22nd, 1991, with a budget of $16.5 million. And it was a hit. It made $40.8 million. Even in a recession, at that time, the USA was in a major recession in the early 1990s. It starred the voice work of John Cleese, John Lovitz, Amy Irving, Steven Spielberg's ex-wife, and Dom DeLuise. And James Horner did the music. Here we go. Wesley wanted to do a correction. I read your comment. You said you thought Beauty and the Beast was the first animated movie you saw, which is next. And then you corrected to no, it was Aladdin. But Beauty and the Beast was the first animated film to be nominated for an Oscar and Academy Award for Best Picture. That's big. That's a historical film fact. That's pretty cool. That was a very heartwarming movie. I'm not afraid to say it. Beauty and the Beast. And man, the budget was $25 million, but it made $440 million. Jeez. I'll say it again, $440 million with a $25 million investment. Major success. And it had the voice work. It was a comeback role for him. Robbie Benson, who had been in Ice Castles in the late 70s, movies like that. Man, I can't believe y'all are still with me. Wesley, Kim Ponder, Becky. Good Lord, thank you. Jeez. An American Tale, Fievel Goes West. Yes, Wesley. But Beauty and the Beast, it just was such a good movie. Oh, you had Paige O'Hara, and it was just Disney gold. So I know, Wesley, you saw it in the theater. It may not have been your first movie, but you saw it. But here's the next one that was your first movie in the theater. Aladdin, released November 25th, 1992. You must be on the young side. You must be a millennial. Tremendous success. The budget was $28 million. The box office was $504.1 million. And it starred Robin Williams and Gilbert Gottfried. It was the 31st Disney animated feature, and it was the highest grossing film of 1992. Let's see. Lyricist Howard Ashman had pitched this. He had pitched this for years to Disney. Oh, to Mr. Katzenberg. Yeah, and so it almost didn't get made. That's right. It almost didn't get made, so thankfully Howard Ashman convinced Mr. Katzenberg to greenlight this project, and did it ever pay off for him? I bet he's glad he listened to this guy. Aladdin, just a tremendous success. Then you had BB's Kids, which is an adult animated comedy, and it was a dud, released July 31st, 1992, but it starred a talent I love, Nell Carter, who had been in Give Me a Break and in a movie I have on film, Modern Problems. I think it was one of the first things she did before Give Me a Break, the sitcom. But unfortunately, she was in that bomb. But hey, she still got paid, right? And she's no longer with us. Nell Carter was a fantastic, beloved talent. Now, not to be confused with the current movie, which was just in theaters recently, you had Tom and Jerry, the movie, released July 30th, 1993. Pretty much just only made $100,000. Budget was $3.5 million, and it made $3.6 million. Ooh, now, this is one that our friend, look at the book behind me, Shaken Not Broken, just to reiterate earlier, our fantastic guest, An Artist's Journey Through Hell, Shaken Not Broken. James Tim Walker talked about working on Batman and Superman for Warner Brothers and DC. And you had, yes, Chance, I am a millennial. Awesome, man. And so is Kate Johnson, who called in. I love that. I need the younger generations, man. I learn from you cats, man. And I hope I teach you things and we can learn from each other. That's great. But Batman, Mask of the Phantasm, released on Christmas Day, 1993, December 25th, with a budget of $6 million. The box office was $5.8 million, but I'm sure it made it back in home video. You know, a lot of these things that sound like, ooh, they lost so much money at the box office, they made their money back with cable and home video down the line. But Mark Hamill was in it, voicing the Joker. Abe Vigoda, do you know him? He was in The Godfather, and he's best known as Fish from the spinoff, and he first starred in Barney Miller as Fish. And I love, on a personal note, Abe Vigoda reminded me of my grandfather on my dad's side. He looked like him, and I just love that character. And I don't know if he's still alive. I remember I was always surprised and happily surprised to find he's still alive every time I checked. I haven't checked in a while. But Abe Vigoda, Vigoda, was in Batman Mask of the Phantasm, as was Dana Delaney. And it was a big hit overall if you count the home video sales for Warner Brothers. Tim Burton, who had scored a major hit in 1989 with his version of Batman, scored success with The Nightmare Before Christmas, released October 29th, 1993, with a budget of $26 million, but it scored $91.5 million at the box office alone, and it had the voice work of Catherine O'Hara from Second City TV, SCTV, Danny Elfman, which is unusual. Danny Elfman is a composer. He scored the music for most of the Tim Burton movies, including Batman. But he did voice work in this, apparently. And Paul Rubens, right? You know who Paul Rubens is, right? Pee-wee, as in Pee-wee Herman. Paul Rubens did voice work in The Nightmare Before Christmas. Then you had We're Back, a dinosaur's story for Universal Pictures, and Amblin Animation. Released November 24th, 1993, and it scored $9.3 million at the box office. Dinosaurs are gold, man. I don't think that movie was a hit. Oh, I'm sorry about I just screamed into the mic. I don't think that was necessarily a success, but I could be wrong. I need to check that out. A Troll in Central Park, Don Bluth, released October 7th, 1994. Total bomb. The only box office it did was $71,368. Bluth's worst. And it also had Dom DeLuise again, Cloris Leachman, who recently passed away, and Charles Nelson Riley, best known for Match Game, being on the panel there. Next up, a major success, The Lion King. June 15th, 1994. Had a budget of $45 million. The box office was almost $1 billion, with a B, $1 billion, with $968.5 million, starring Jonathan Taylor Thomas, who was red hot from Home Improvement, the sitcom on ABC. And he had done, as Wesley mentioned in our last show, Man of the House, which wasn't as successful a film, but I liked it, with Chevy Chase. He played Chevy Chase's son in that film, opposite Farrah Fawcett. But Jonathan Taylor Thomas, Matthew Broderick, James Earl Jones, Cheech Marin of Cheech and Chong, Whoopi Goldberg, Robert Guillaume, Benson from the old sitcom Benson. It was a 30-second Disney animated feature, and you got to love Simba. And that is Swahili for lion. Simba means lion in Swahili, which I'm sure most people know. But it was the highest grossing traditional animated film of all time. The Lion King. That's a record that still holds. And it sold 30 million VHS copies, not dollars, copies. So multiply that towards what, $14.95 at the time? That's big profit. Best-selling home video, too, of all time. So how about that? The best animated box office and best home video sale, The Lion King. What a winner, The Lion King. The Swan Princess, released November 18th, 1994. That sounds cheesy, doesn't it? The Swan Princess. Big bomb. The budget was $21 million, and it made $9.8 million by New Line Cinema, and it had the voice of Stephen Wright, the deadpan comedian, Jack Palance, and John Cleese. We're nearing the end, folks, of this marathon show today. My gosh, 3 hours and 30 minutes going in and counting. But you had, let's go, Thumbelina, another Don Bluth production, released March 30th, 1994. Budget of $28 million and only made $78 million. It had Charo, another sex symbol I'm going to mention next week. Kuchiku, chiku from the Love Boat. Charo, she's actually a great singer. And I'll tell you a story next week about her and, oh, God, from the Jerry Lewis Telethon 2009. I think I have a clip of it. I'm going to try to play you the clip. Something so hilarious that Jerry Lewis said about Charo. Jeez. He was basically calling her human Viagra. It was hysterical. It was just wait for it. Wait for it. It'll be funny next week. But, yeah, the Swan Princess tanked. And you had Thumbelina, another bomb by Don Bluth. March 30th, 94 by Warner Brothers. And Barry Manilow Music. Oh, that's what we're talking about. With Charo and Gilbert Gottfried. Budget $28 million and only made $17 million. Oh, my God. I'm on the last page. We're in the home stretch. A Goofy Movie, released April 7th, 1995, a musical comedy animated movie with a budget of $18 million, made $37.6 million. So it did well for Disney, A Goofy Movie. And then Gumby the Movie, a bomb, stop-motion animation movie with a budget of $2.8 million, but it only made $57,100. They should have hired Eddie Murphy. Remember his Gumby bit when Saturday Night Live was funny? And actually, Eddie Murphy was on one of the worst seasons, allegedly. And Julia Louis-Dreyfus, who went on to do Seinfeld in '89 and National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation, she was in that cast. But Eddie Murphy years, I loved it when he would do the Gumby skit. But if they'd hired Eddie Murphy, you probably couldn't afford him with a budget of $2.8 million. Maybe that's it. But maybe it would have done better. They should have hired Eddie Murphy, damn it. Pocahontas. June 10th, 1995, had a budget of $55 million, and it earned a trailblazing $346.1 million. And get this. Did you know? I didn't know this till I researched this last night and yesterday. Christian Bale did some voice work in that. Where are the drugs going? I'll do a Batman impression from the first Batman Begins movie he did. Remember that scene where the guy's getting falafel on the street corner? And he pulls him up with a rope, and he goes, where are the drugs going? God, I don't know. I swear to me. I thought that was so over the top. I love Christian Bale as Batman, but the way he would scream, just like I did in the mic, the way he would scream like that, and the funny thing is, he had that terrible dark eye makeup, which was introduced, to be fair, in the 1989 Tim Burton Batman. They put this like charcoal eye makeup around his eyes. And I always thought it was funny, like in one of the movies, the one with, I think, the Joker, right? Great film, right? The Dark Knight. And there's a scene where he's at like this high society function, and he runs into the back room to do a quick change into Batman. You mean to tell me he sat there at the mirror putting on the dark makeup? You know, I get it. It's for effect, but I just thought it was funny. You know, it's like, yeah, right. Like he stopped to put that makeup around his eyes. It was such a tense scene in that movie, The Dark Knight. But anyway, I digress. So getting back to Pocahontas, I didn't realize Christian Bale, American Psycho, prior to that, had done voice work in there. And so did Mel Gibson and Irene Bedard, set in 1607, Pocahontas. Now here's the movie that changed everything, Toy Story. It was the world's first entirely computer animated feature film and the first film for Pixar. Released November 22nd, 1995, and it changed everything. The budget was $30 million. The box office was $373 million. And, of course, it starred Tom Hanks, Tim Allen, and Don Rickles as Mr. Potato Head. So that changed everything. Some could argue not necessarily for the better, depending on your perspective. If you're a pen and ink artist who couldn't adapt to changing technology, I don't know if you would have loved that or not. But Toy Story was revolutionary, and I love it. I can't say anything negative about Toy Story, but I don't know. I don't like change that much. Just me, just as a person, I struggle with change. I can adapt to it, but I struggle with it. And I have mixed emotions about that, but I love the movie. And Toy Story 3, even, I thought that's one of the movies where the sequels actually were entertaining. You know, it's one of the rare instances. Hunchback of Notre Dame. Number one movie of 1996. Budget of $100 million. That's a big budget. My gosh. $100 million budget, and it made $325.3 million. Released June 21st, 1996. And it starred Demi Moore, Jason Alexander from Seinfeld, and Kevin Kline, the husband of Phoebe Cates, we mentioned in the last Podblast about sex symbols. And it was the 34th animated feature for Disney. It's like Disney could do no wrong. They could do no wrong. Beavis and Butthead Do America, released December 20th, 1996. Big hit for MTV. Budget of $12 million. It made $63.1 million. I saw it. I saw it in a theater with my buddy Hunter Golson. Hunter always loved Beavis and Butthead going back to MTV, and I did too. I thought it was hilarious. And Bruce Willis and Demi Moore, when they were married, worked on that. And Robert Stack from the original Untouchables show. Cloris Leachman, and of course, creator Mike Judge did the voices, and it was a big hit for MTV and Paramount Pictures. Beavis and Butthead Do America. James and the Giant Peach. Budget of $38 million. Took a bath a little bit. Made $37.7 million at the box office, but again, home video would have made it profitable for it. Released August 12th, 1996. And it was a combination of live action and stop motion animation. It just didn't take with the public in the theater anyway. Anastasia by Don Bluth. It was a hit. He rebounded strong with Anastasia. $50 million budget, but made $140 million. And it starred the voice talents Kelsey Grammer and Kirsten Dunst, future Mary Jane Watson. And what was that movie she did as a cheerleader? I really loved it. She was a cheerleader. Bring It On. Sorry, Bring It On. I love those movies. Bring It On. I guess, did I just admit that I like to, I'm on the air. Yeah, I admit that I like to Bring It On movies. And Christopher Lloyd, best known as Doc Brown in the Back to the Future movies. And Bernadette Peters from The Jerk. That was her best known breakout role in The Jerk. And it was released on my birthday, November 21st, 1997. Anastasia. And David Newman did the music. Hercules, released June 27th, 1997. Budget of $85 million, and it made $252.7 million, starring Danny DeVito, James Woods, and Rip Torn. What a weird name. I always thought that was a strange name for an actor. Rip Torn. And that was the 35th Disney animated film, Hercules. Mulan, released June 19th, 1998. It was the 36th Disney animated feature, starring Eddie Murphy. Budget of $90 million. It made $304.3 million, and it had a score by one of my favorite composers, Jerry Goldsmith, along with John Williams. And George Takei did some of the voice work. Sulu from Star Trek. Oh, my. George Takei did some of the voice work in that. And Pat Morita from The Karate Kid and, of course, Happy Days. Arnold. All right, and I never cared for this animation. I was like, I didn't care for that. But I didn't like this animation. Rugrats movie. I didn't like Rugrats movie, but it was a hit. Released November 20th, 1998 with a budget of $24 million, but it made $140.9 million for Paramount and Nickelodeon movies. Paramount Pictures and Nickelodeon movies partnered for that, and Rugrats movie was a hit. I cannot deny that. Now, the second Pixar animated movie was released on November 20th, 1998, A Bug's Life. Saw it in the theater with Samantha Livingston, and we really liked it, even though it's a computer animated movie, and that's why I'm wrapping this up, because I want to wrap with the traditional hand-drawn animated movies, but, this is the transitional period in cinema, thanks to Toy Story. And A Bug's Life was a good movie, the second for Pixar, like I just mentioned. And Jonathan Harris, Dr. Smith, oh dear, oh dear, oh the pain. He did voice work in this movie, and the budget was a pretty hefty one, $120 million for all those CGI artists, I reckon. and the talent, and it made $363.3 million. And I hope Jonathan Harris, rest his soul, got a nice paycheck from working on A Bug's Life. And it was the number one animated movie of 1998, A Bug's Life. DreamWorks released The Prince of Egypt. Excuse me. And that was the first traditionally animated movie for DreamWorks. Did you know that? The Prince of Egypt, released December 18th, 1998, with a budget of $70 million, but it made, gadzooks, $218.6 million, with music by Hans Zimmer, and it starred Val Kilmer, Michelle Pfeiffer, Sandra Bullock, Danny Glover, Patrick Stewart from Star Trek The Next Generation and Professor X in the X-Men movies, Jeff Goldblum, Ralph Fiennes, Steve Martin, Martin Short, and Helen Moran, to name some of the major talents in The Prince of Egypt. I guess, oh, wow. It just seems like a low budget considering all that talent. Jeez, but hey, it was a monster success. We're winding it down. I've got 4 more to go. We're in the final 4, people, in this marathon. Kim Ponder says, me either, Chance. No Rugrats for me. Amen, sister. And I need to get you those tickets, by the way, for the Renaissance Festival. We'll talk offline, or I'll send you a message. Let's see. I loved this movie, The Iron Giant. Released July 31st, 1999 at Mann's Chinese Theater in California. That's where it premiered. But then in wide release, it was released on August 6th, 1999. Had a budget. Something isn't... Yeah. Hang on a second, guys. All right, Toy Story 2 was the number 1 animated movie that year, but The Iron Giant starred Jennifer Aniston and Harry Connick Jr. He should be on the women's sexy list. I know a lot of women, at least in my experience, always tell me they thought and think he's sexy, Harry Connick Jr., but I digress. And Vin Diesel, who's in this movie. But it was a Warner Brothers release. That's right. It didn't do so well. The budget was $50 million and the box office was $31.3 million. And that's a shame because I thought it was a really touching, cool movie. And it reminded me of something silly that most people think is silly. I mentioned a lot, the Space Giants with Goldar, the 50-foot robot. I always thought the Iron Giant was an animator's tribute to that. Call me crazy. That's why I liked it. It reminded me of Goldar and the Space Giants, the Iron Giant. Cute movie. Too bad it didn't have the Disney name on it. If it just had the Disney name, I bet it would have been a tremendous success. But I think it did well at the home video market. What I'm trying to say. Running out of steam here. It's been almost 4 hours since I've been on. So next up, Tarzan, the 37th Disney animated film, was released June 12th, 1999, with a budget of $130 million, and it made $448.2 million. And it featured Phil Collins doing the music from Genesis, and of course the solo artist. I can feel it coming in the air at night. Oh, Lord. And Brian Blessed was in it. And Brian Blessed was the main Hawkman in the Flash Gordon movie. And he had a comeback around this point in time, because he had done the voice in Star Wars Episode 1, The Phantom Menace. We do not care about Naboo. Remember that? He was like the lead, that strange frog-like race. Forget the name of that race, but that was voiced by Brian Blessed. And he was in a show I love, I mentioned, by Jerry Anderson, Space, 1999. He was in a great Season 1 episode called Death's Other Dominion. And in Series 2, he played Maya's ill-fated father, Mentor. Anyway, he was a shapeshifter in that show in Season 2, Episode 1, Space, 1999. I know nobody cares or knows what I'm talking about, but I just loved, in the year 1999, ironically, that Brian Blessed had a comeback, and I think George Lucas did that intentionally. George Lucas was inspired a lot by Lost in Space and Space 1999. So Tarzan was another big, tremendous hit at the box office for Disney, 37th. The King and I, on the other hand, for Warner Brothers, was a dud. Had a budget of $25 million and it earned only $12 million. Released March 19th, 1999. And now finally, I'm jumping ahead in time. I got to mention one of my favorite animated movies, and I'm so old. I almost think of this as a recent movie, but it's not. Lilo and Stitch. Lilo and Stitch. I love that movie. I love Hawaii. I've been to Hawaii 3 times, but I remember watching this with Samantha Livingston and her mother, Sandy, and we just loved it. We loved it at the time, watched it on home video for years after, but it was released June 21st, 2002. Had a budget of $80 million for Disney, but the box office was $273.1 million. How do they do it? It's quality and name brand recognition and just the trust. You trust that Disney's not going to put out a turd, not to be crude at dinner time, but Disney, you're going to be entertained. You got to hand it to Walt Disney, okay? You just got to. And I know Al Hardy worked for Walt Disney in their radio division years ago, and he said he was treated very well, at least back then. And they own, of course, ESPN, Disney, and now Marvel Studios, 20th Century Fox. It's kind of scary, but, you know, I can't say anything negative about Disney because they turn out a great product, and I love their theme parks. Been to both, Disney World and Disneyland. But Lilo and Stitch is just such a cute movie, and I loved it. So, wow, that was a marathon. I want to thank everyone for hanging with me. And Wesley Millsap says, I'm going to cut up on Facebook comments before I sign off. The song Phil Collins did in Tarzan was You'll Be in My Heart. And I know that. I was just funning around with the Genesis hit, you know, because that's one of his most known songs. Kim Bonder says, I already ate, so it's cool. Don't worry about when I said turd. Use the word turd. Wesley says, in my middle school chorus, we performed a rendition of You'll Be in My Heart. Cool, man. That's cool, brother. Do you play an instrument, Wesley? Let me know in the comments. Can you play anything? You must. Or did you just sing? And nothing wrong with just singing. I think that's awesome if you sing soprano or whatever. You know, tell me, what is your... Thank you, Chance. You're welcome, Kim. And I'm sorry if I neglected. It's been fun. Thank you. I appreciate you being out there. I think I went way too long. This is a record. 3 hours, 46 minutes, 20 seconds. Good Lord. I wanted to do a contest update if I could. I got a text. Love the show. Thank you. All right. Well, this is great. The interaction, it touches my heart to know that people are out there watching. And don't forget about our contest. Giving away every episode ever made of the old cheesy Lost in Space TV show from the 1960s, 1965 to 1968. All you have to do is answer this trivia question. You can't Google it. You just got to know it or talk to someone that knows Lost in Space. Hey, even if you hate Lost in Space, you could give this DVD to a grandchild, huh? Or give it away as a gift. And if you don't have a DVD player, I'm telling you, coming up in the next contest that's going to be Fall Guy related, I'm going to furnish a portable DVD player with a monitor. It holds a battery a long time. It's going to be great. So even if your laptop doesn't play DVDs, and the new ones don't, everything's streaming these days. I think that's a shame, by the way. Just like I wish that cars had compact disc players in them, along with the Bluetooth and the streaming. I just wish they did. Hey, what's this? I like that music by John Williams. Here's a question. Getting sidetracked. There was an episode of Lost in Space that George Lucas was influenced by, clearly, when he came up with the concept of the hyperdrive in Star Wars with the Millennium Falcon. The concept of the hyperdrive and hyperspace. So what I want to know is, what episode of Lost in Space, an original episode, not the Netflix show, the new show, but the original show, which one talked about the concept of hyperspace? Okay, there was a definite episode, and I talked about it in a previous Podblast. I'm not so hubris to think you'll go back and listen, and there's over 61 shows, so I know that's not going to happen, but you can find out. Just tell me the episode title. It's all you need to do. And if you've already won, you're ineligible. Sorry, like Michael Hopkins won every Wonder Woman episode ever made on DVD. It's a lot of entertainment, starring Linda Carter. And we had another winner that won Room 222, Rob Tremblay. He won the Room 222 Series 1 DVD set. And we gave away some other stuff, but if you've already won, I'm sorry, you're ineligible. Wesley, yes, he says, no chance. I do not play any instruments. I do sing. I sing tenor. Awesome, man. Barry King, BK on the air. Thank you, Barry, for being there. I love your show, as you know. I better sign off. This has just been a marathon, and I really need to breathe. I'm out of breath. And thanks for tuning in. I appreciate every one of you. And I want to thank our special guest, James Tim Walker. Please check out his book. He's a great man. And rewind the interview. That was the best part of today. I hope the audio wasn't bad. I'm going to rewind it later. Love you all. Thank you. Thank you, Kate Johnson, for calling in. Thank you, Kim Ponder. Thank you, Becky. Thank you, Wesley. We'll see you next week, part 2 of Sex Symbols. See you then. Bye.